Hello and welcome to a special live edition of the Digital Lounge. Today we're going to explore the data and AI challenges faced in the UK university sector. Universities are under increasing pressure to improve digital capability and adopt AI, but for many, the challenge is not access to technology. It's more knowing where to start and how to turn that ambition into something that actually delivers value. Across the sector, we're seeing a common pattern. There is strong interest and plenty of experimentation, but achieving real outcomes is harder. So, in today's session, we're asking a simple question. What is a practical starting point for data and AI transformation in universities? What does that actually look like? And more importantly, how do you build the data capability, confidence, and governance foundations needed to make it stick? We're live across LinkedIn and YouTube. If you're joining us live, do say hello in the comments and share where you're from. We always love to hear from you. And do ask questions. I'll include those as we go through today's panel discussion. I'm Mark Brisson, and welcome to the Digital Lounge. So joining me today is Sam Bailey from the University of Hull. Sam's the Executive Director there, or as he explained earlier, the longer title, Executive Director of Planning, Projects and Operations. Sam, thank you for joining today. And also on the call, we have Nathan Smith, Crimson's Education Industry Director. Sam, Nathan, thank you for joining. If I can turn to you first of all, from your perspective at the University of Hull, how would you describe where universities are right now when it comes to data maturity, digital capability, and AI?
Thanks, Mark, and hi both, and thanks for inviting me to join the conversation. I mean, obviously it's a mixed picture, and it's such a broad set of challenges that it's difficult to give one straightforward answer to the question. But Hull have certainly been in the leading pack in terms of teaching AI programs at scale, both in terms of traditional student enrolments, which we were the highest in the UK in the most recent data, but also in the locally focused executive education that we're doing. And AI has become a key priority within our education strategy, and we're supporting students in their use of it at the university. But this doesn't necessarily translate into widespread and consistent use of the technology within our staff base. And we kind of see a range of activity from highly effective deployment in a handful of cases to light experimentation for a large proportion, to ambivalence or even in some cases fear. And the pace of change makes developing a strategy that can both harness opportunities and handle risks a real challenge. And I know that that's one that different institutions are grappling with in different ways. And one thing we are keen to do is to embed a culture of ethical AI use across all aspects of our business. We are acutely aware of the need for data literacy from our people and how we ensure that we have mature data governance as an institution, and that is something that needs sustained effort and investment in what are really quite financially constrained times. But if we don't get that right, then we won't be able to make the most of the opportunities that AI presents us.
And I mean, Nathan, you're working with universities across the UK. Is that does that reflect what you're seeing more broadly, the story at Hull?
Yeah, I think what Sam articulated there very well was there's kind of like the opportunity, but also some of the constraints that are actually on universities at the moment. And I think a lot of it actually comes back down to the transformation side. It goes back to driving change. If you don't know what you don't know and where to apply it, how do you learn quite quickly and at pace when you've got the challenges that are going on. And you might have other constraints. So we've talked about pace, time. You mentioned finance with Sam as well. So where do you focus your efforts? And I think this is where you're seeing a lot of universities actually turn around and say, well, actually, what is the strategy around this, and how do they go around actually identifying, Mark, you said, identifying those opportunities, but then realizing them as well, which again, a lot of it will come back into the transformation aspects. You know, always, I know everybody's talking about AI. AI for me is technology, but it's the age-old thing. Technology in itself doesn't actually implement successful change. There's all the other aspects in there as well that are very, very key and important.
Nathan, I think your microphone's just catching on your zip slightly, so we're hearing a lot of scratching from the little. That's okay. That's okay. Just sort of extending that then. So, what do you think tends to hold back experimentation? You know, it's a sort of a broad field at the moment with AI. What are you seeing there, Nathan? What's holding people back, do you think?
I think there's an element of, I think Sam kind of touched on it a little bit. There's an element of, you know, again, not knowing, having the right frameworks in place. It's the same old thing, isn't it? You tend to find business always wants to go at pace, but when you start to put governance in play for all the right reasons, that ultimately it can be seen as a blocker sometimes. And we've seen this an awful lot with a lot of emerging technologies, you know, whether it was, you know, cloud-based platforms that came through, Mark, new capabilities that came through from Office 365. I think the difference with AI is probably the pace at which it's evolving, and actually, you know, the current state of the market, and where, you know, that need to transform irrespective of technology is already in place within the sector. Yeah, so there is a need to go through and change because of the market conditions. Obviously, looking at AI and potentially the opportunities that it can bring, you've got to put that into the mix of transformation. So, you know, what we're seeing at the moment, and I know, Sam, we've spoken about this before, is I think how do you try and go at pace and identify opportunities either from the kind of end user community or from the students themselves? Yeah. And also go top down and look at the strategic opportunities. And the one thing that hasn't really changed an awful lot is the strategic goals and ambitions that universities actually have and the challenges that they've got. What we're trying to do here is go, okay, so where can AI actually apply in there? So there's a lot of education and knowledge that you've got to do, not just from a technology point of view, but actually within the organization and with the customers as well. And look at the services and the operations that are required and the impact that AI can have, as you would with any kind of technology in that place. And Sammy kind of touched on it a little bit there. You know, a lot of that is education and learning, not just in the people who are, you know, identifying those opportunities, but then actually implementing and driving the opportunities as well.
Thanks, Nathan. Sam, if I may turn to you now. I mean, what I think was striking about your approach when we first met was that you've not started with the technology alone, but you've focused on the people and the data capabilities and that practical problem solving. Could you kind of explain a little bit more for our audience about your approach?
Yeah, and you know, we've got some really great colleagues here working in the technology space and keeping us on top of the developments as far as that's possible at the pace of change that we are seeing. And of course, we've also have experts in managing, analysing, reporting on data. I've got a great team of analysts who can turn any kind of data into anything I want. But actually, my focus has been more on how we can facilitate change at scale and at pace, so that we can put ourselves in the best possible position for the future. And really, however things develop on the technology side, and the only way that we can do that, of course, is through our people. And so I felt that we needed to do something that brought together a critical mass of colleagues, enough so that we can spread ideas and good practice across the institution. And so we partnered with an apprenticeship provider who could meet what we needed at scale, and who would seek to understand and meet those strategic needs that Nathan was referring to. And hence our data academy with Multiverse came into being. And we had about 40 learners across 3 programs on the first cohort, all data focused. But such was the success that we then launched another cohort in January, so around 6 months later, and we've introduced an AI focused program as part of that cohort, and that's taken us to over 90 learners currently on program. And that's from all areas of our professional services cohort, as well as good numbers of academic colleagues, which surprised me at first, but they've been a group who have been really keen to get involved with this as well. And so all of these colleagues are learning foundational skills around data and AI, using examples that they bring from their work, and being able to test those ideas, put things into practice, and really see the impact that improvements in those areas can bring about really quite immediately. And the good thing for us is that all of this is paid for from levy funds, which otherwise we'd just be returning to the government. And that drawing on that funding has really allowed us to do this at a much faster pace and greater scale than we would otherwise have been able to do.
Incredible. And so what kind of results are you seeing so far from that investment?
So we'd kind of set out three key themes that we wanted our cohorts to address. And so one was revenue generation, one was cost reduction, and one was cost avoidance, kind of including the opportunity costs of having limited skills of capabilities. And one of the things I've really appreciated about working with Multiverse is they really do focus on that business impact. So as the executive sponsor, I receive regular updates on the projects that our learners are delivering as a result of the programs. And although there were some people who were skeptical about the academy in the early days, and not least the substantial time that colleagues have had to commit, we've really been able to demonstrate impact, and that has allowed us to build. So to give us give you a handful of examples of what our learners have been delivering so far. As I said, there's impact across the organisation, but we have been able to analyse new student inquiries and patterns and reduce the manual work there. So our future students' response times have dropped by about 80% as a result of some of that work. We've been able to build reporting to support student continuation. So in one faculty, we've seen a drop in the time spent by 64 hours, and that allows them, more importantly, then to go and engage with those at-risk students much more quickly. And from there, we've then seen further projects that have evolved that data work into AI-driven approaches to identify those students kind of automatically and to bring those to the attention of the right people. We've looked at the use of our printers across campus to facilitate decommissioning and redeployment there and saving costs. And we've developed technical roadmaps in a number of areas, and one example that I can give there is around AI-assisted offer making and reducing the time that it takes us to make offers to students, which we know has an impact on our conversion. And I guess the final thing I'd say on that is it's worth mentioning that all of these projects and the dozens of others that I could have mentioned come from colleagues a really wide range of seniorities and in vastly different job roles. So allowing them to understand the data and how improving our use of it can impact our strategic priorities has helped colleagues have an impact beyond their immediate roles as well.
Incredible. That's incredible progress. And has improving data literacy and confidence across the teams changed how people are now engaging with AI?
It has, and again, it's fairly early days, but we've seen some of that enthusiasm expand out from just the individual learners, and they've been able to test ideas really within quite a limited framework. We've clearly got guardrails around the use of AI and the software that we can use to develop it here. But yeah, we are seeing a greater level of experimentation, fewer apologies for using AI to automate pieces of work, and leaning into much more using AI in an ethical and effective way to reduce the time that we spend doing the things that actually add less value, and turning that into where time spent with students, working with colleagues across the organisation to do things that really we need humans to do.
Yeah. So Nathan, I mean, we've seen approaches like this, and I know at our innovation conference last year, or in fact, it was probably 2 years ago now, we talked about there are kind of two tracks of being strategic, but also tactical and gaining momentum there. We've seen approaches around starting small and building capability, but how do you see universities scaling that into something more strategic?
I think, again, Sam, just listening to you there, some of the points you raised, I think, Mark, because you said it, you've got to start small, but think big in parallel. And I think this is the point. As a university, the leadership teams and the right relevant stakeholders have to sit down and say, right, we recognize that AI is here and it's going to impact or potentially provide value in how we're actually delivering our service to the students and out to industry. But also then it support us in our operation and how we deliver those services as well. So I think it's very keen that people can actually identify that and look at that and align that into part of their portfolio of this is what we've now got this as an enabling set of tools that can help us, and be open to that. But the openness comes from leadership culture, making sure that you've got the right frameworks in place. You need to think that way, but whilst in parallel, get on with it. And I think, if you've got that view that, as Sam was saying there, even if we're not quite sure exactly where all of these opportunities are going to lie, or we don't know everything quite now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be starting. And, Sam, as you were saying there, developing the capability and skill sets and knowledge that you can actually go out and, have people with, that can go and actually identify opportunities and deliver things, and whilst also engaging with students, engaging with faculty, staff, colleagues, helping them to identify where those opportunities are, tracking and linking that back to value. Again, all links back to transformation and change. I think the key bit here is, a lot of the universities have already got a lot of the building blocks in place for this, because they've been driving change, transformation, and working with technology for a while. I think the bit that's probably interesting is the element of the fear, Sam, as you said earlier on. It's is AI going to come and take my job? It's the unknown at the moment, because they don't. It's the use cases, it's how it's being applied. So I think that starting small helps with that as well, because it's demonstrating quite quickly actually that it's there to assist. Yes, it's got to help, save money, generate money, improve experiences as well, Sam, as you kind of highlighted there. But ultimately, it's when you get out to the end user community and you start engaging with the people that are engaging with the technology, and they can see the benefit, and you can demonstrate that and link that back to what you're trying to do from a transformation point of view, that it actually works. I think the bit that's interesting there, everyone, and Sam, you mentioned it there, there's a big thing around, just because you can use AI, should you get that in any kind of change. You can come up with an art of the possible and think, in a greenfield environment, I could build these things, but there can be lots of reasons as to why you wouldn't be able to implement it straight away. Yeah, and I think ethically is a really interesting one when it comes to AI. Just because we can, should we? And I think that's the one element that probably comes in with AI that really focuses the mind. I think there's a lot more view getting into the knowledge and the technology and the unknown around data management, security is key in here, as well as ethics. But ultimately, the frameworks already exist. You just have to evolve them slightly. And I think that's the bit we're seeing at the moment. It's the shift in, we know we've got to do something. So how do we go out and start to experiment, trial, develop the skills, think about it strategically, and then maybe look at how we modify our operations to better support transformation, but also recognizing AI is a component part of that, or there's a level of maturity that's required because the technology is evolving and it's a lot more reliant on data.
I'm just going to plug our AI readiness evaluator. For those that are maybe listening to this beyond live video in the car, we have an AI readiness test that you could take within 3 minutes or so. If you go to assess.crimson.co.uk/AI-ready, I'll say that again, it's assess.crimson.co.uk/AI-ready. And as I'm saying that now, I think that URL should have been simpler, but it's what's really interesting about that is that a number of people have taken that test from the same organization, same university, and it's interesting to see how those scores differ across the university with the perceptions of how ready they feel they are for AI. Anyway, that's my plug over. Sam, if I can turn back to you, how are you thinking about the next steps for Hull?
So, clearly we need to continue to encourage that learning and experimentation in this space, and give as many colleagues as possible the confidence to use our data effectively and drive efficiencies through AI use. And that might be through our academy, and we, I certainly hope that we see extra cohorts going through there, and also kind of less structured learning and the opportunity for experimentation, some of the short courses that we run, and sharing some of the expertise that we already have within the organisation. And the learning doesn't stop when the program finishes as well. So we're building a community of practice, including those who've participated in the academy, as well as other colleagues who regularly work with data. So that will allow us to keep innovating, maintaining pace with the technological change, and building a common understanding of how we do things at Hull. By teaching our colleagues fundamental principles about data governance and giving them a common language to use, we'll be able to implement our data strategy more quickly. And, I'm really conscious that we need to keep a close eye on some of those building blocks and those basics around data management, in order to really to get the most out of AI. And if we don't continue on some of that work to tidy up our data, make sure it's organized in a way that is appropriate, then ultimately we won't see the same kind of return on investment that we might otherwise do. And clearly our AI strategy remains in constant development. We found that this group of colleagues is an excellent resource for continue to improve it, and I know of other universities where these learners and the use cases that they've generated have really helped drive the development of AI strategy, but that continues to move and develop at speed. I've also kind of started to see a change in our IT teams who look after resources such as our data warehouse, and I'm seeing a greater level of confidence that they can let colleagues behind the curtain to build reports and automate work within their areas. And that wasn't something that we really set out to do with the academy. And in fact, we explicitly put guardrails in place to avoid those teams being overrun by requests that they would then need to manage and the additional workload. But actually what we're finding is they're reassured by the structured learning that colleagues have done, and they're proactively looking to support it. And we're thinking about actually how do we help learners share the reports that they've generated, share some of those processes in a safe and effective way. So, okay, we have our gold standard reports that are signed off by our IT teams, that are used by our executive teams, but they can't generate dashboards and information at the same kind of pace that this wider group can do. So what are the measures that we can put in place to make the differences between that work clear, but also share the learning that we have across the organization. So, we know that we'll hear an ever louder clamour for access to the latest technology to make the most of this learning, and that is probably going to catch up with us at some point quite soon. But we expect the difference will now be that colleagues can make a case based on an understanding of the impact that they can deliver, and help us to justify any outlay. So rather than, can I have 20, 50 pounds a month for specific license in order to go and tinker with some stuff, I will be able to deliver this, which will save us this, or deliver this in terms of revenue or service impact, and that's worth the money. So I'm sure our CFO is standing by for some of those conversations. And finally, as we continue to navigate the really tough external environment, we know that we need to capture the time savings that our data and AI improvements are offering us, be really clear about what that return on investment is, and then reinvest that time in delivering against those critical goals.
Fantastic. And just before I turn to Nathan, Sam, I mean, if you were to give some advice to university leaders listening to this about AI right now, where do you think they should start? What would you do if you were starting with a blank page?
So, I think everyone's going to come at this from a different angle, and mine was around the data, the insight, what it tells us, and how we can use that to inform decisions. Different colleagues will come at this approach from different ways, but it's really important to take it back to what are your overall strategic goals? What do you want to get out of this? If you needed to define those kind of 3 or 4 bullet points around problems that you would really like to solve, what would those look like? But then, amongst the excitement of AI and the opportunities that you can that are presented by using better data, your people are your biggest asset, and you need to invest in them in order to take advantage of what technology has to offer. And that's not just today's technology, that's what's coming 6 months, 12 months down the track. If your people are skilled and in a position where they can approach that technology with confidence, you will get the most out of it.
Fantastic. Nathan, the same question to you. What advice for university leaders around AI? Sam mentioned about get those top 2 or 3 sort of objectives. Easier said than done, though.
If I'm honest, I think they exist, and I think this is the point. I'll throw a parallel in, Mark, with local authorities, because we work in that space as well. They are under as much pressure for different reasons, as the UK universities, right? So again, you're a lot of they're under pressure to make sure that they can drive operational efficiency, reduce cost where possible, and that might be cost avoidance rather than actually anything to do with reducing any staff that you've currently got today. So that if we try and do more, how do we ensure that we're not actually accruing more cost onto our operation? They're trying to make sure that they, very similar, shift that administrative burden where possible into automation to help with productivity, so that they can get existing staff either to reduce workloads, being blunt. So it's not always about reducing headcount, just reduce workloads, and push them into doing more value activities back to either citizens or students in that space. And I think, from a strategic objective point of view, or even the guardrails, as Sam was saying, what are the North Star objectives that we're trying to achieve? I don't think it takes too long to go back in and say, what are they? Because I do honestly think that the leadership teams in the universities, they know what they are. I think the bit here is, so where are the opportunities and how do we do this? I do think it's more the kind of framework that supports that. And, why are people starting small? Because it's breaking down some of the barriers. You're trialing stuff, you're experimenting, you're learning as you go, but you have to do the other bit in parallel. And if you go to the top of that, I think the leadership and culture is key in that area. So where have we seen organizations sort of progress quite well in this space? It's where the leadership team have been open to the fact that we don't know all the answers, but we need to be doing something. And the communication is very much, as Sam was saying, that this is very much about keeping the human in the loop. We're trying to use AI ethically. We're trying to use it to support you and provide better experiences out to you, as well as meeting some of our strategic goals. Again, a lot of that comes from communication. Yeah, it's back to the change element and making sure that it's inclusive to staff. And I think that if you link it back to the objectives and the purpose of what a university is for, again, you're linking it back to change. Most people will understand. And what we've seen. I've got one local authority in mind. We're going into the adult service teams and the child service teams, and there is nervousness. There is an element of fear around we don't know everything. But I will say the team there are very open to embracing or identifying and working to identify the opportunities because of the way that the leadership have communicated that through. And we are now seeing parallels of that in some of the universities that we're actually working with as well. But again, I think a lot of that, and Sam, this is one, it's very interesting listening to what you were saying. Mark, you opened with this. The technology is making you rethink what's possible, but the challenges are evident and are there. It's just sometimes you don't know how, why, or so you're back into making sure you've got the the bandwidth of the right people to identify those. But you know, I do think a lot of what you were saying about the assessment, a lot of the building blocks are already in place. It's just actually going in and going, right, well, what do we need to tweak or change based around where these new opportunities lie and how we lever the technology. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think the key takeaways for me today, AI is always talked about as a technology, but it's, as always, it's more about the people. It's about building that confidence, developing capability, creating the space to experiment and learn. It's also about those strong data foundations, and you know, we touched on that today, and I know we've talked about it on previous shows, and also about starting small and building that early value, building that momentum. And I think Sam's illustrated today of an approach that's working for the University of Hull. Sam, Nathan, thank you both for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and it's always great to have a university sharing their real world experience as well. And it sounds like if there's a student listening today and they're interested in AI, they should be going to Hull, because you guys are you guys are at the forefront there. Yeah.
Not just AI, Mark. We will, you know, we're happy to hear from interested students across a wide range of courses that we offer.
Amazing. Well, I wish you best of luck with your intake this coming summer. Okay, thank you both. So that's it for today. As always, tell us what you'd like to hear on the Digital Lounge. We love to have universities on the show sharing their experience, but we also work in housing. We work with local governments. We work across a number of other sectors as well, in truth. So if you'd like to hear from somebody on the show, or perhaps you'd like to join us on the show and share your story, we'd love to hear from you. And as always, if you couldn't join us live today, you can always hear this show on the platform that you like, Spotify, Apple, all the usual. You can listen to it in the car on your way to work. And don't forget to join our newsletter as well. We can update you with new guests, with our latest insight from our team of experts. If you go to info.crimson.co.uk/newsletter, you can sign up there and learn lots more. I think that's it for us today. I look forward to seeing you again on the Digital Lounge very soon. Thanks for joining us.